Good afternoon. This is Critical Talk with Professor Amina Al-Din, and there's so much happening in the news today. So I thought in the middle of trying to cover what is, the RNC and the DNC is coming, talking about violence, I would kind of put them all together and talk about things that were important to each Muslim community. So, over the next few weeks, I will be going to each Muslim community to gather thoughts uh, and conversation about what's going on. With me today, I have Jamil Muhammad, um, who is a longtime minister with Minister Louis Farrakhan, and he happens to be in a class of mine. He's born in Cincinnati and reared uh, there, but lives now in Washington, D.C., the kind of hotbed of all of the political activity, but makes his way around.
Mm.
And so I thought that with Jamil Muhammad that today we would cover a wide spectrum of stuff. One of the things is, and welcome.
And thank you so much for having me. Assalamu alaikum to you and all of the viewers.
Wa alaikum salam. And to our viewers, please comment. You have the ability to comment. We can see them, and we will try to address your concerns, issues, or questions while we're online. Um, let's start with one of the things that's been noticeable is the lack of visible Muslim participation in either Black Lives Matter or protests. Although what is not seen is each community's focus on housing, on food, on healthcare concerns. So I'm trying to figure out, you know, maybe we need to talk about what various communities are doing.
I think so. The question about where are you guys? We're in the streets. We're engaged. Where are you?
Uh-huh.
That kind of dialogue sort of leaves off the table the first and fundamental consideration that the whole history, for example, of the Muslim community in America, particularly among Blacks or what we're called today African Americans, the whole history has been us protesting. We've been showing by our very actions that
Yeah,
Black lives matter.
right.
Black lives don't just matter when they're in the clutches of the wicked, racist, renegade police departments around the country. Black lives matter when mothers are nourishing their children. Black lives matter when fathers are maintaining their families. Black lives matter when brothers and sisters relate to each other in a holistic and healthy way and build communities to further the progress of housing and food and healthcare, etc. So to ask that kind of a question is really not taking into account the full spectrum of what people can do in this hour. For example, the circumstances that land us in the hands of the police in many instances. These are things that our Islam tells us about moderation and the middle path and the straight way of doing things. Some of us get into these situations, they're never our fault, and we should never be shot down in the street. But we could take every step, every precautionary step possible to stay within the realm of safety, and that would, of course, increase our likelihood of survival. We're not going to change the police department. No amount of training, no amount of no amount of reorganization. Oh, we're going to give them better training. The training has never made a difference, and it never will. The police departments in the United States grew up out of the slave catchers. The police departments in the United States become the occupying armies for the ghettos that are roped off and gerrymandered and redlined in city after city in America. Dick Gregory once said it like this. He said, up north, they don't care, down south, they don't care how close you get, as long as you don't get too big. He said, up north, they don't care how big you get, just please don't get too close. See,
Mm.
but the ethic of race relations and the interaction between races is the dynamic that fuels that whole discussion. So no, we're not absent. Our very work is there. When you see the FOI and the MGT and the organized, trained cadre of followers, you're looking at people who move on command and not impulse. You're looking at people who move in an organized way and not as an amoeba-like mob. So you're looking at people who are able and willing to take organized steps.
Well, I think that that is important because I don't think many people, even many students of history, realize that much of the violence comes out of slave catchers during slavery, and the treatment is exactly the same. I mean, it's got some new technology, but the complicity of those who want their slaves back in containers remains. But let's go back to what you've seen communities do during the pandemic, because the pandemic continues. I know, for example, that there was on the Nation of Islam site a kind of how to sanitize your house. There was also some things about growing food with recipes, this and that and the other, which anybody had access to because people were being told to sanitize and didn't quite know what is the difference between that and I clean my house all the time.
Right. And I think to create order in your house, spatial order is one thing, but to actually sanitize.
Looking at my junky study.
No, you and I and all present company excluded. But I have to say that in the home, there is a means by which this can happen. And again, I have to bear witness to the great teaching of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, not as compared with another teacher or another leader or another guide, but certainly I'm grateful for his leadership. Because for years, since I grew up, 1969, I came to the Nation of Islam, before any of you were born. I came to the Nation of Islam.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Came to the Nation of Islam, and all I ever saw was the cleaning of houses in an orderly, systematic way. And that is what you see. That guide to sanitizing your home and how to clean your home is hundreds of pages long because it gives details on every aspect of that. And today we're learning by means of the coronavirus that cleanliness is not next to godliness. Cleanliness is godliness. So that's available to our people. When you look at the farming and micro gardening options, you can garden in a container, you can garden in a window box, you can garden in a self-contained environment or a plot of land in an innocuous looking urban lot. And you can produce food that actually will help you to survive, organic, healthy food that actually builds your immune system instead of suppressing it. So all of these things are happening. You look at housing. I'm so proud of the Mecca project in Detroit, where people are buying. You don't have to be a Muslim to become involved in it, but the Mecca project allows us to put down roots and become homeowners in the city of Detroit, which, as you know, has always been a very prominent and important city, particularly in Black America, but also specifically to Islamic communities all over the world. So Detroit is growing. Food, there's health, there's housing. All of those things that you mentioned are being addressed, and the COVID-19 pandemic has exacerbated the conditions, but it has also accelerated our creativity because necessity is the mother of invention.
Well, let me go back to make sure that our listeners can go check out. It's called the Mecca Project. Is it the meccaproject.com.org?
I don't know the if you fiddle with it, you'll find it, but I don't know the actual way that it's listed on the internet. Pardon me, because I am the lowest of the low tech. Okay? I still like my children to call me. They say, Daddy, we're going to text you this weekend. No, don't wait all week and then tell me you're going to text me. Call me on the phone. Okay. They got this new thing, got a picture in there. You can see your grandchildren talking to you.
Yeah.
It's like a face phone or something they got. Yeah, you can do all that.
Facebook and FaceTime. But it's important that we know about these initiatives going on inside of communities. I know here in Chicago, Folks who had worked for Uber and Lyft converted their energies and used their cars to get food for older people, people who were shut in, people who didn't have transportation. And all of those things became extremely important.
That's
Uh,
right.
what do you think? Well, let me answer it a different way. Um, I have seen Muslims out at the protests.
Hmm.
I don't know that I've heard their voices, however, lifted with reason to some of the young people who just need, they got all the energy in the world. They just need some guidance as to how to say, how to be in front of that microphone. Um, how have we helped or not helped that effort? Because even one time I saw there in Washington, there was a bunch of religious folk on the steps of some place or the other, several Protestant ministers. I think there was a Catholic priest, there was a rabbi, but there were no imams.
Mm. Mm.
And that says, well, aren't we part of the conversation? And while you think about that, let me take a moment for a break and we'll come back to see if we can answer that question.
Assalamu alaikum. Open up your eyes.
Assalamu alaikum everyone, it's your brother Zain Bika from South Africa. One of the first educational programs ever produced for Muslim children was the ever popular Adam's World series. The colorful and comical Muslim puppets stole the heart of a generation. Sound Vision will be releasing brand new episodes of Adam's World with the launch of a Adam's World app. Subscribers will enjoy new Adam's World episodes as they are released, as well as all the classic episodes of Adam's World. So visit adamsworldapp.com now to learn more, subscribe and enjoy new adventures of Adam and his friends. And let's keep helping tomorrow's Muslims today. Assalamu alaikum.
It's Adam's World. Believe me, there's a lot to see. Bismillah. Let's explore.
What was it like when you started this network out, when you started Sound Vision those many years ago?
You know, after 9/11, one lady called me and she says, what is your channel which I can watch? And I say, I'm sorry, we don't have a channel. And you know what she said? She said, then how America will know about you?
SubhanAllah. Anything you want to say to the people who are watching? That we had one sister who messaged that she grew up on Sound Vision. What do you say to the people who have been long supporters?
Thank you. Thank you. It is because of you we are able to do all of that. So the generation of Adam's World, you need to take it over for the next generation. And that's my invitation to you. To keep telling everybody where to watch. They can watch it on Galaxy 19 satellite, Amazon Fire TV, Apple TV, or easy thing, muslimnetwork.tv, or our YouTube channel, or our Facebook channel. And with your help, inshallah, ladies, the one who called me, what channel should I watch Muslims on? Answer is here and now.
Let me just ask my producers to put up the website for, I'm glad you brought up that Mecca project. I had heard about it, but then everything gets clouded in my head. So how can we, especially as a Muslim community, provide some guidance so that there is a link between the young people who we're bequeathing some energy, but we also got to bequeath them some guidance.
Yes,
What they don't need to travel down a road that has been taken and yielded nothing. But there's got to be some doable demands. There's got to be some force behind the demands this time. So talk about what are your thoughts on that?
I think that what the fulcrum that gives our demands the force to bring them about is the balanced way that we approach every aspect of a holistic human life.
Right.
One of the great things that weakens us, and I don't mean great in a good sense, because great does not necessarily mean good. We do know that. Yeah, we do know that.
Yeah.
But one of the things that hampers us and is a great impediment to us is the fact that for all of the needs of our lives, Black people in America in particular, and you'll find my comments focused on Black people because, and this is a revelation here, I myself am a Black man. So you may find my comments not limited to, but focused from that perspective. You see, Black people tend to beg for what we could get for ourselves. We buy what we want and then beg for what we need. And you find other people who have a constant thought in their mind of self-sufficiency. They are not in demonstrations making loud demands for jobs and justice. These people are doing for themselves. I was in San Francisco recently, and when you go up Washington Street and you head up the hill into Chinatown, there is the atmosphere that you might as well be in the Eastern Hemisphere. There is self-sufficiency on turbocharged. Why? It's because those people understand for themselves, and you'll never see Chinese ethnics at demonstrations in Sacramento begging for rights or jobs. You don't see them begging the community not to kill them. There is a different set of principles at work there. Now, of course, they have not been exposed to the same kind of sociological acid bath that we have. Right. However, there are examples that we can follow there. Other communities, the Jewish community, the Korean community, they're doing things that give their communities a sense of self-identification and purpose that cause them to be free from exposure to the worst parts of racist, xenophobic America. So when we come into that, what do we say to the youth? What do we guide them to? A future for themselves. You know, I was reflecting on a thought I had years ago that downtown in every city in America, there are skyscrapers.
Yeah.
towering mountains of steel and glass. And in every one of those cities, some owner can take his or her son or daughter downtown and stand on the corner next to a building that they own.
Yeah.
Point up at the pinnacle of the building and say, one day, son, that'll all be yours.
Yeah.
What can we point to and say, one day, son, that'll all be yours because we united and worked together in a unified way for the common cause of the collective good? What can we say we did? Not that much yet. So we have to begin there.
Don't you think we have to take into consideration the fact that we are at the bottom rung of the ladder that's been constructed in a particular kind of way.
Mm-hmm.
So even with our skills and our gifts, there are things put into motion to prevent us from building that building and being able to bequeath that to our children.
Mm-hmm.
And I've read and thought about it, and particularly in that book, Caste, where she's pointing out all the times when, whether it's Tulsa or Rosewood or this place or the other, where we've put our talents and skills to work, and then whites will come and burn it to the ground and kill us.
Mm-hmm. There's no doubt about that, having been a historic pattern of the action of racism in America. That is why I believe, and shout out to the great author Isabel Wilkerson, who wrote Castes.
Yeah.
Isabel and I were classmates at Howard University.
Well, call her up so we can get on the program.
We'll do that. We'll see if we can work on that. But we were classmates at Howard University back in the classroom. And I remember
19 what?
Never mind. But Isabel was one of those brilliant exemplars of the principles that happen when we get together and we put our minds on the projects together and we work. When she talks about Rosewood, and when she talks about Black Wall Street, and when she talks about Langston and Boley in Oklahoma, and when she talks about these other Black towns, even Soul City, North Carolina, and Mound Bayou in Mississippi, and when you look at Wilberforce, Ohio, and certain other towns around the nation that were formulated with Black institutions or Black economies at their core, the one thing that has been missing is a national network of connection and cooperation among those towns. That is the great thing about the Muslim program as put forward by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. It calls on us to cooperate from one end of the country to another and to begin to share resources and build with one another. The separation, and I want to finish the answer by saying this as quickly as I can. The separation idea is also an anathema to many people. Oh, come on now. That's a pipe dream. And stop it. They'll never allow that to happen. Look what happened in Rosewood. Look what happened in Tulsa at Black Wall Street. But remember two things that we as Muslims learn in the Holy Quran, that Allah has already demonstrated his ability to take the kingdom from whom he pleases and to give it to whom he pleases. I'm not trying to be spooky now, but I'm trying to tell you that is the reality. When we live in this country and have undergone what we've undergone, we have a much more compelling case for the idea of separation or independence in a nation of our own than did the colonists in 1776. We have a much more compelling case to be in a separate nation or territory of our own, like Thomas Jefferson advanced in the 19th century, and later in that century, so did Abraham Lincoln. So we have real reasons for that, but we have to be able to build and to understand that the thwarting and the frustration and the disassembly of our ideas and dreams is built into the mechanism of America.
Oh, it is.
Yes, that's what America is.
Our task is going to be, how do we now come up with, as we get some knowledge of self, as we incorporate all of the things we can do for self, get ourselves away from waiting for somebody to do for us, right? And then moving along, how do we then strategize with from a new position what we can do so that those things don't happen again. One of the things, and I have the honor of having Jamil and some others in a class that I'm teaching, and they keep me on my toes. But one of the things is we're at a precipice regarding stuff in this pandemic. It might be a first precipice, it might be one of many to come. But now, because all moratoriums will end at the end of this month, September. Those who had FHA loans, and they could have reconfigured, I think, or re something or the other, their loan to put the payments they have missed at the end of the loan. But that other 50% of Americans couldn't. Renters couldn't. And all of those moratoriums will end at the end of this month. Courts open up again, but landlords have decided they're not going to wait for courts. They're going to start, excuse me, what's called a tsunami of evictions, because they can get something out of it. You know, it's a tax deduction. They can get some tax relief. They put people out. They can shut off water, et cetera, et cetera. Also, inside the stimulus package is money to get the food transferred to food pantries. So in the next 2 weeks, food pantries will have no more food. Of course, unless we take food to them to make sure there is food. So here we have an opportunity to quickly strategize on what we can do. Now, my husband happened to remind me that there's something called C rations that they use for the Army, and we got huge stores of C rations. Some people will look at it and say, "Oh, I'd rather starve than eat this," but if they are really starving, they will eat it. But how can we just begin to think about strategizing before these twin crises meet?
Wow, and that is a question ripe and pregnant with significance, because the hour in which we live is, and again, I know that many of our viewers are staunch citizens of the academy. They are firmly rooted in the intellectual community, and as members of the intelligentsia, it's very difficult for them to think in literal terms as they read scripture. They read scripture often as archaeological documents and anthropological historical texts.
I know. Put them on the shelf somewhere.
Right. Oh, well, that, but in reality, for the believing community, the scripture becomes an illumination for the path that we would walk on our way out of the jam that society is in. And there is no avoiding it. There is no avoiding that famine is coming. There's no avoiding that homelessness is coming. And the preparation, the warning has been given to us in this time as surely as Noah gave the warning that it was about to rain. But Noah was mocked. So was Elijah Muhammad. Noah was derided. So was Elijah Muhammad. Noah was made fun of.
This is not a platform for that.
I was trying to preach. I was preaching.
And I'm going to stop you from the preacher.
Okay, all right. Well, I'm going to take my preacher hat off. Let me take my preacher hat off and say this. The guidance that we seek and that you talk about, how do we get together and put our heads together? We inform our counsel. We inform our shura, if you will, with the ideas that are illuminating from the pages of scripture. I think that's a general enough way to say it. And then we go further into it, and specifically, we talk about how America could destabilize herself if she is so greedy for filthy lucre and so greedy for the money that she could save by cutting people's water off and the tax abatement she could reach from putting people in the street. Then she has to understand the backside of that, which is people roaming the streets hungry and desperate
And no,
and have no place to go.
and the police will in our comments, people are taking me seriously. Rabia and Sadi say one of the things we can do is hurry up and begin to take non-perishable items
Mhm.
to places where people can get them. And everybody listening to this today needs to start today to begin to stock places for people to go. I mean, what you just said was just so right on target in that we've got to realize it's not a far-fetched thing. People roam the streets because they don't have housing, because we shut all the shelters, which were rat infested anyway. And then we got hunger on top of that. And even with the few people getting reemployed, they're reemployed without health care benefits.
And at barely subsistence wages.
Exactly.
Mhm.
And they got to take a job which says people do want to work,
Mhm.
right? Because they're rushing to these jobs which give them no benefits, hungry for work.
Mhm. And then we're all, you used the word at the top of the show, we're all poised with all 10 of our toes hanging over a precipice.
Yes.
What happens if health goes awry? What happens if there's an accident or an emergency in the family? Then we are in trouble and we have difficulty that we may not be able to manage because we're stuck in a position where we don't have any resources. The resources are being gobbled up by a greedy few. And so the question of whether we're going to continue to live in an unchecked and unfettered oligarchy.
But I think
question.
They're going to find, like you were talking about the other side,
Mhm.
they're going to find that people know where they live. And they're going to, the worst thing, one of the things that sets off an oligarchy is you deprive the people of housing and food. And then you dribble out the food to make people do your will. That's what I want to discuss after we take this short break.
Sure. Yes, ma'am.
My wife, who she's a professor at the University of Cincinnati, who's Catholic, and by her watching and listening to our 3-year-old son watch Adam's World, she ended up taking Kalima Shahada. She embraced Islam because she learned so much about Islam and the other prophets. It really affected our life in a great way, and because of Sound Vision and Adam's World, we're Muslims.
I took my Shahada 15 years ago, and I actually am from a rural part of Ohio. And so I found the catalog for Sound Vision, and I ordered the tapes and the CDs and the books, and I used those, and especially for my little daughter, that's how we basically learned our Islam, and Islam entered our hearts through the wonderful works of Sound Vision.
Okay, assalamu alaikum, brother. I just want you to know that I love the Sound Vision website, that a lot of times when I'm looking for information, especially as it relates to homelessness, domestic violence, and women issues, I go to that website, and then I see what you've written, and then I copy and paste it, and spread the word, because the wisdom is there, so I can't do any better than what Sound Vision has already done.
Sound Vision is our survival guide. It is the organization that provides skills for Muslims how to survive and thrive in this community here in the U.S.
Assalamu alaikum, my name is Anam, I'm in 11th grade, and I grew up with Adam's World, and what it taught me was unity, respect, and love for the Muslim Ummah.
Adam's World is the greatest show ever made. Take me to the Kaaba, man. I love that puppet.
So back to how do we've got one set of suggestions, and I would ask others who are listening, please give us some comments. How do we know we can do food drives? They need to start now. Today is September 1st. We got 2 weeks and all of us got surplus. Something.
That's right.
Non-perishable.
That's right.
That we can put that someone else can use. I don't know. How would we think about housing? Does it mean we need to get into some of these abandoned houses and clean them up and make them able to house a family? What do we do?
There was a group in Philadelphia years ago, headed by a good brother of ours. He's gone on now. His name was Charlie Boo Burris. And Boo Burris had a group called Acorn in Philadelphia.
Acorn, yes.
And Acorn's idea was that the Philadelphia housing market, even back then in the late 70s and early 80s, had become priced out of reach of many of the poor to afford decent housing. Public housing was crowded and it was no longer decent itself. So Acorn began what they call a squatters movement. That is not something of which to be ashamed, because Charlie Boo and them had houses that were better than some of the people that was paying $1,000 a month rent back then. And so that was one thing. Secondly, we have to understand that the society that we live in is not, as you said earlier, Dr. Aldine, geared. It's not geared to us. So we have to gear things to ourselves. We must give surplus food. In fact, I'm sitting here looking in my kitchen right now. I got about 12 fruit cakes that y'all can have, because I got aunties, and every year, never mind.
But cakes last forever.
Yeah, they do, and there's a reason for that.
At a wall, all you had to do is put some water on them, and they're ready to eat. No matter how long you've had it.
That's right. When you talk about those C rations, or MREs, as they updated the language to call them, meals ready to eat. Shouts out to all my Army veteran brothers and sisters and armed forces veterans. But dear brothers and sisters, this is the time for us to do exactly what Professor Amina is saying. And let's look at how we can make some differences for our own people.
Okay, so we know that there's a precedence for squatting. So we need to see what we can do with that. We need to begin a food drives across this nation to stock up, and the government can do what the government will do, but we don't need to let them play with our lives.
That's right. And I'm so glad that there are community groups. Of course, many masajid, many of the mosques in the Nation of Islam around the nation are giving out tons of food during the coronavirus pandemic. Tons. I'm so proud of them. They're in Baltimore and Chicago, Los Angeles, and other cities, Oakland, California, giving out tons of food to our people who are hungry and don't have a way to get food. This stimulus check, that is, we hear about it, but the stimulus check, it hasn't stimulated very much. And we saw that the tepid response of the U.S. government to accurate reports of rampant fraud in the small business loan program, with people putting in all kinds of bogus reports and then being crazy and going out and buying 2 yachts and a leopard skin print smoking jacket. People were out of their minds, because the greed and thievery that is at the root of this country is beginning to be exposed.
There was no, to my knowledge, and that's limited, consequences for that. Saudi says on our comments that she doesn't agree with squatting in abandoned houses because it may be dangerous.
No, it'll be dangerous if they're not worked on. See, we're not talking about going in there and keeping the house. We're not going in there and keeping Charlie Boo. I thank Allah for Charlie Boo. He didn't go in there and leave the houses dangerous. He made the houses safe for human habitation. But what many slumlords will do is hold on to a property, let it fall down in upon itself for other financial benefits to be accrued later. See, there is a greed at the root. Where do you think Fred Trump came from? Fred Trump entered a world with a malevolent spirit, but he was given the mechanism to exploit the poor by people who had done it before him. He wasn't inventing housing racism and discrimination. He was a big practitioner of it all across Queens and Brooklyn, but he was not the inventor of it. This is a country which is telling you, you better get yours because I got nothing for you. And the kind of community spirit that we're going to need, the kind of communal getting together and making sure everybody's all right, is going to give us that Big Mama spirit. Because when you used to go to Big Mama's house, everybody had a bowl of soup, even though everybody in the house, there's 15 children in the house, but if somebody else came in, they got a bowl of soup too.
Well, how do we in cities and suburbs across this country begin to put together teams of men and women who know how to work on a house and just do the work? Acorn did it. I was in Philadelphia when Acorn was working, and they did it. So how do we begin? Does every masjid community begin to put out calls looking for houses that we can then get in neighborhoods where, who knows, some of those landlords may agree to help us, but we don't know. But we can't have, and this is September, cold weather is around the corner for some of us. We got to get people shelter before.
That's right. That's right.
One of the things in Chicago, where I am now, is that, oh, well, developers are just not going to come together. Well, we don't need developers. That's a middleman. We need energy and work to start today. Food drives, people, masjid communities, Christian communities, everybody's community, Jewish, whatever.
That's right.
To put out a call to get teams of people identify property in your area.
That is the practical reality. And Dr. Amina, you hit it right on the head. That is where we create the reality of what Dr. King called the beloved community.
Yeah.
Of what Mayor Dinkins used to call the beautiful mosaic.
Exactly.
That's where we create that, because we begin to do and act out the principles that we claim. America is a trash talking place. You can talk a lot, but a lot of people ain't doing nothing. Yeah. You ever seen back? I remember in my old neighborhood, it'd be guys that talk, my man, you know what I get you out, I'm gonna do it. And then another guy walk up to him, bam, and knock him out with one punch. Didn't say a word.
This case is closed.
Because the case is closed. That is the way that we have to put ourselves in work. We got to put some punch to our Islam. We got to put some punch to our Christianity and Judaism and our righteousness and our moral principles and our guidelines. That's exactly right. Dr. Henry says food and shelter are tangible human needs. However, what do we do positively affects one's self-esteem and self-actualization that was affected by this pandemic.
Well,
Wow.
I think, Lawrence, thank you for your comment. And I think we're on the road. If we can just get people to listen to us, you know what I was thinking about? All those small motels that shut down. They were shut down pre-pandemic, but even more shut down post-pandemic. Can we, as masjid communities, for landlords who are still present, work a deal?
I hope we can. And I think that as the believing community, and again, I'm not going to limit that to Islam, but certainly the masajid and certainly the mosque can be the rudder to guide the moral and principled activity of a much larger community called America.
Right.
The rudder is a small little thing. It's not the biggest, but it actually guides the multi-ton ocean liner. We can do that if we begin making. I'm excited by what you're saying, Dr. Amina, because
I can't swing a hammer, but I remember how to swing one.
Right.
All these young people, they're sitting at home. The amount of instruction they get a day is maybe 4 hours. They get all the time in the world.
And think about it. And the instruction they get,
the skills people. Right. These men and women who they're carpenters. They know how to paint. They know how to build. You know, we can get in there and turn, and especially something like a small or large, but particularly these small motels, which dot every city, inside the city, on the outskirts of the city. They
Yes.
can house 15, 20 families, pay them up, get the water running. And if the masjid communities come together and stop with their ideological craziness, but I won't go into there, and get with the Christian communities and the Jewish communities and say, look, we got a job to do for survival.
That's right.
All this other craziness for the moment. Y'all come back to that if you survive.
Yeah, see that voice that you're putting out, and I know that all of the viewers and listeners share this with me. I just want to say it. What you just heard was the maternal authority of the Black woman. Black women, since Hajar in Quranic days, have done what I hear Dr. Donna Austin of Rutgers University always referred to as Black girl magic in the days of Quran. She talks about that Black woman's spirit, that it is not just magic, but it is magnificent. It is something that, because it's not just sleight of hand or leisure domain, so it's not magic in that sense. It is the real wonder of the Creator speaking through the vessel of those who have been forced to rely upon him with the greatest amount of sincerity and call on him in the middle of the longest nights and rely on him in the worst of situations. And the Black woman is the one person on earth whose experience, particularly in the American context, whose experience has been so wrought with horror that most of us couldn't even conceive it.
Yeah.
But here she comes now. As you hear my sister, Dr. Amina, you hear her saying, this is what we need to do to bring people to survive. And she's not talking about just her people, just her family, just the people in her hood. She's talking about everybody. That's the maternal authority of the woman of God. And so what I hope we can do.
Maternal authority. I'm going to use that on my kids. But I'm serious about how we go about this, and maybe I'll come back to this in another thing, because we got a minute. Every community meets one way or the other on Friday. Some is Saturday, some is Sunday. If all of them, the folks listening, take it back to their community and say, look, we got an idea here. Let us see if we can push it through.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed.
And true, Salahuddin says, I believe in forcing the divided leaders to unite the whole Black community and to one community. Well, Salahuddin, I don't care if they agree or not. We got people who are going to die. They're going to die of the elements, or they're going to die because they're starving to death. And if they want to skip the word unite because they think they're going to lose some, let them lose it, put another word in there, but let's get out and do the food drives. Let's turn some of that property into shelter for people. It's enough of us doing it. Our local and state governments can't stop us because it's about people, and they can keep doing their political stuff. You know, I know that's what makes them happy. They live well, they get paychecks, but the majority of us don't. People are scared to death, and some of that fear can be abated when you're doing something. When you feel that you're doing something about a problem, then your anxiety damps down.
That's right.
Because I'm not just sitting here being scared out of my wits. I am doing something.
That's right. And doing something is the bottom line. We all must do that. If you allow me to say before we go off, I know we only have a few seconds, but I want to thank you.
Good. We got some time.
Oh, we got time. Okay, because I was going to the wrap up.
Preach, but we got time. I'm exerting my maternal authority.
The maternal authority. But I want you to know, family, that what we have to do is do something. What Dr. Amina said something, and I want to rewind just a little while to focus on that. We do meet virtually every Friday for Jummah. We meet for Hanukkah on Friday night.
Yeah.
We meet for Sunday meeting for the Nation of Islam and for churches. We meet on Saturday for Sabbath gatherings.
That's too darn many meetings, but you better take this to each and every one of them.
Exactly. So take it and show them that what we have to do is call upon the best of our builders. That's why I love that Mecca project. There's a brother whose name is Brother Talib Muhammad. I want to shout him out a special greeting. Brother Talib Muhammad, originally from Connecticut, now lives in Detroit, and he works with the crew that goes in and converts these houses. And he'll show it on his Facebook page. Go look at him. He's Talib Muhammad, and tell him Brother Jamil sent you. But he's connected with.
Can people get on that site and figure out how you tackle it?
Yeah, you can ask Brother Talib. He'll tell you. He's not trying to hide nothing. Talib Muhammad from Detroit. Thank you, Connor. Connor's on top of it. That's Talib Muhammad, Talib Muhammad from Detroit. Y'all get on Brother Talib's Facebook page and tell him the Country Boy sent you. Tell him Brother Jamil sent you to get on his page and learn how they do. First, they go into the abandoned property. They do the demo. They clean out the property. They prepare the property for its a renovation, and those properties are being renovated at all times. There are professional realtors in all of our communities. People who understand real estate management and apartment management. People who understand food distribution. Top executives with companies like Sedesco who do food service all across this country for colleges and schools and school systems and municipalities. These are our brothers and sisters, and they're in place, and they know these things. But while the clock is ticking, and it's running fast.
Yes, it is.
The clock is ticking. Do you know in less than 10 weeks, we'll be in cold, frosty weather?
Thank you.
In 10 weeks, it'll be Thanksgiving. What y'all gonna do? Because ain't no more this year. You ain't no over the river and through the woods to grandmother's house we go. It's not gonna happen that way this year. This is a year that has been strange and unusual. And what has happened early in the year, even if it changes status by the end of the year, it will not yet be complete in its renovation or ever return to what we used to call normal. I'm just leaving you by saying America and the normal that we got used to, Dr. Amina, was never really normal. America's normal was freakishly abnormal and twisted from the root. At the very beginning, we thought it was normal for the police to roust us up on the corner and beat us. There used to be a field.
I have never thought that.
There used to be a field down at 61st and Halford Avenue in West Philadelphia. They built houses on it since then. But it was a field. And there were officers that used to come up from the 19th district, and they would roust us up off of 60th and Lansdowne Avenue. And for whatever reason, you get thrown in the back of the police car, you go down to 61st and Haverford and take a whooping.
Right.
And that was the common.
I know that is still happening. And what I'm going to do is continue our conversations, because everybody is anxious right now, because we haven't paid enough attention to really understand the machinations, because these people aren't that bright. But what is happening is that they look at our responses to stuff, and that gives them some more largesse as to what they can do. But what they don't expect us to do is on September 1 to begin massive food drives, to begin massive building projects, to anticipate families and single men and women, and even older people needing places to go. We all have got to be ready to donate some time.
That's right. That's right. Oh, there's no doubt. I tell you, I love what you've said, and I'm not representing any official coalition of Masajid. I'm not representing any official position, even for my home base, the Nation of Islam. I'm just one guy. But this one guy today is saying, I'm with it. I'm saying, Dr. Amina, whatever we're doing around the country, if I can lend my voice, lend my spirit, lend my backbone, I don't know how skilled I am as an artisan or a craftsman to build houses or repair them, but I can be there and do whatever I can do, because this is a requirement of us.
And it is something we can do.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have to sit back and wait. If they get a stimulus, wonderful. If they don't, we're still rolling. I'm going to have to, unfortunately, end our program here. I will have you back, and we will do some more talking as we try to get the word out there. Thank you to those of you in the audience who have been on here just typing away, and we appreciate it. This has been Critical Talk with Professor Amina Al-Din, with my wonderful fellow traveler, Jamil Muhammad, and we will travel some more, and we will see you soon. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.